Welcome, and thank you for joining I-5 The Heat. I'm your host, Jazz Springer. We are here with one of our candidates running for Sheriff of Richland County in South Carolina. Our local election is June 14th, and we would like to shed some light on this candidate and local issues. Join us in applauding James Flowers. Thank you for joining us today, James Flowers.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I guess we can just jump into the questions.
Okay. No
Tell me about your history being a probation and parole agent and then transferring over to SLED.
Well, I went to the University of South Carolina where I got my bachelor's degree. And I knew I was going to go into law enforcement from the time I was 17. I wanted to go into law enforcement and arrest crooked cops. Get rid of crooked cops is what my goal was for my career. After I graduated from college at USC, I got the opportunity to start in law enforcement with the South Carolina Department of Probation Parole Department Services. And in that job, I started out in the field as a field agent, a probation parole agent, where I kept up with probationers and parolees in their everyday activities, in their home life, their work life, their family life. Also served a lot of warrants and just helped a lot of people in that way. I was able to get promoted to the community policing coordinator for that agency. Not too long after, I was there a few years and I was promoted to that position. In that job, I served as the captain over a special operations response team, which was a 100-person team that furthered the safety needs for the state of South Carolina. I was supervisor for the fugitive investigators statewide. I also served on the U.S. Marshals Operation Intercept Fugitive Task Force. I did internal investigations. I was an instructor through the Criminal Justice Academy and firearms, defensive tactics, pressure-borne control tactics, arrest scenarios, tactical driving, personal protective equipment, just about anything you can teach law enforcement officers. I got that training while I was at probation and parole. Doing that job, being the captain of the Special Operations Response Team, gave me the opportunity to work closely with SLED, State Law Enforcement Division. And in that position, SLED started a Homeland Security Division, and I spoke with Chief Robert Stewart at the time, and I applied for that position, and I was one of 4 agents that started the Homeland Security Division at SLED. We started that division where we implemented the National Incident Management System and Incident Command Systems that came from the federal government. This was started after 9/11 when 9/11 happened and Ground Zero, all of the law enforcement officers and fire and everybody showed up at Ground Zero, and they realized that they couldn't talk to each other. They didn't know who was there. They didn't know where they were. They couldn't communicate, and so it led to the need for a national model for incident command, and that's what we implemented here in South Carolina. After that, I went into criminal investigations, and that's pretty much where I stayed for the rest of my career. Now, part of investigations where I work cases. I worked every kind of case you can think of, from money to murder, is what I like to say. I worked corruption cases. I also worked officer-involved shootings. While I was an investigator, I was assigned to the FBI Violent Crime Task Force. Did the U.S. Marshals Fugitive Task Force. I was on the SWAT team at SLED, where I drove the armored vehicles. I was on the entry team, and I also was an FBI-trained hostage negotiator. I did do some time with the Secret Service, assigned to the Secret Service on protective details for Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Joe Biden.
Wow.
So we've done a little bit of everything in law enforcement that you can think of.
Okay, I would say you definitely qualify.
We are qualified. we have almost a 20-year career at the state law enforcement level. Being in the state at the state level, a senior special agent at SLED, I was given and afforded the opportunity to head up many operations that were big operations statewide in different parts, where like crime suppression, where I commanded basically hundreds of officers from multiple different agencies, and it all came under my command. So that was a big deal. Sometimes there would be incidents where big crime would happen, and you'd go to a county where maybe there was a small county with not a big sheriff's department or police department. They would call us for assistance, and when I got there, the sheriff or the police chief would come straight to me and say, "What am I supposed to do?"
Oh, wow.
So that's part of the experience that I have traveling this entire state, working closely with law enforcement leaders, building relationships and alliances to further the safety needs of the people of South Carolina.
Okay. So what do you think that you would be able to offer Richland County that we're not getting now?
Well, I think it's that leadership. I think it's new, fresh leadership. It's Richland County has had the same leadership at the Sheriff's Department for the past 20 years, and I think that, and also the current sheriff has been in law enforcement 41 years, and while that's a commendable thing, at some point when you're in power that long or in an office that long, it becomes more about you than it is about the actual department, and I think that's where we are now. So it's time for fresh new leadership at the Sheriff's Department. It's time for the type of leadership that we talk about, traveling the state, building relationships and alliances with other agencies, sharing information and resources to solve and prevent crime beyond territorial boundaries. But just having that statewide leadership is one of the things that we're going to bring to Richland County.
Okay. So, Mr. Flowers, do you believe that we should have term limits for the sheriff's position, and why?
Well, I'm not opposed to term limits. The question is how many terms is the limit, is the thing.
Right.
Because sometimes a leader can be very effective for a very long time. Sometimes they need to go immediately. And so it would all depend on the position, the person in the position. I would think that 3 terms as sheriff is probably about enough.
Oh, wow.
It would not bother me if there were term limits, and 2 terms, like the president, could be enough, maybe not enough. 3 terms probably max. 12 years is long enough to be sheriff.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I would have to agree with you, because then that gives a new person in the chance for Richland County to grow and have new opportunities.
That's right.
Instead of 20 years and keep going, and then we just get the same old.
Right.
So,
well, if you stop it very early, then it takes time to implement your plan.
Right.
Because you have to hire employees and deputies who have your same mindset when it comes to enforcing the law. And it's law enforcement is a tough field, and people after 20 years or 10 or 15 or 20 years as a law enforcement officer, it's hard to change people's thought process on how to enforce the law. And so if you go in only saying you're only going to do 1 term, then you're a lame duck the moment you walk in the door. Right. As soon as you walk in, people are already lined up to run against you, and you're really not going to be as effective as you can. So you need to at least have the ability to be there 2 to 3 terms, so that you can come up with your plan and implement your plan and actually have time to do it.
Right. It's kind of like Obama. Obama didn't have enough time to do everything that he needed to do within the first 4 years. So for him to be in it again, it gave him opportunities to give us more that we needed. So I definitely agree with you on that. So now, what do you believe about if you become our new sheriff, the police officers in the departments? Do you think racial tension and issues would decrease? Like with the issue with the cop in Columbia on St. Andrews Road and him shooting a person who didn't have any kind of weapon. Do you think certain situations like that would decrease, or with you in office, or?
Well, I'll tell you this. I think that me being African American, a black man, which I'm proud of, I have not run my race as a black candidate. I've always said that I want you to vote for me because I'm the most qualified candidate to do this job. I care more about what's going on in Richland County. But the fact that the leader of the Richland County law enforcement's agency would be African American would in itself inherently improve race relations to a certain extent. But at the same time, we're not going to rely on that fact. We're going to go out and make sure that we recruit minority officers from colleges and from communities to have a more diverse law enforcement agency so that we work on diversity. We're going to train them on diversity so that they have better ideas on how to deal with issues involving diversity.
Okay. I think we definitely need that here. The situation in Charleston, and it keeps happening. What about officers shooting, what is it called? Center mass? Is
Center
that
mass.
You think they kind of jump the gun when that happens with most situations where the citizen doesn't even have a weapon on them? Do you think they kind of...
No, so here's what needs to be known more about that. The law enforcement officer needs to make a good determination as to whether to use deadly force or not. And so that's the beginning of the situation. If the person is not presenting deadly force to the law enforcement officer or great bodily harm to the law enforcement officer, then the law enforcement officer is not justified in their use of deadly force. So whether it's center mass or shooting them in the hand, it doesn't matter if you're not supposed to do it in the first place. So first thing we need to do is make sure that we're training our law enforcement officers to recognize deadly force situations, not have biases or training issues that make them think that situations are deadly force when they are not. But we also need to provide our law enforcement officers with, superior training, superior weapons, superior numbers and force, so that every situation doesn't have to be a deadly force situation. However, when a law enforcement officer is presented with a deadly force situation, then the law enforcement officer is trained, I know because I trained them, to shoot center mass. Because shooting a suspect who is presenting deadly force to use center mass gives you the best opportunity to eliminate the threat. Law enforcement officers are not trained to kill. No one is taught to shoot to kill. They're taught to shoot center mass because that's the best chance they have of actually hitting the target. When you shoot at a piece of paper that doesn't move, it's easy to pick different pieces and parts of that piece of paper to shoot at. But when you're in a dynamic situation in the field and your life is on the line, your life or somebody else's life is on the line, you don't have the luxury to pick out certain parts of the body to try and get shots that may not be lethal. Your best chance to hit a target that can be moving and can also present you with deadly force is to shoot center mass, and that's why we train law enforcement officers that.
Okay, I was concerned about that, and I really knew. Now, what about officers here in South Carolina carrying a camera on their
body
person?
cams? I like body cams. I think body cams are exciting. I think they're a very good tool to add to the transparency tool belt for law enforcement. I know that there are going to be issues with body cams as far as they will fail sometimes. They're not going to show the whole situation like people think. So people need to kind of tamper their expectations with body cams. It's going to be a good thing. I think anytime you can show more transparency and show more about what you do is always a good thing. It protects the public. It protects the law enforcement officer. But we need to make sure that we do it smartly. For example, one of the issues is what do we do with the data that we collect, the actual video, and where do we keep it? How do we store it? How long do we store it? Who has access to it? And so, I prefer to err on the side of transparency. I would like for you to just be able to see almost everything that's on the camera, because if a law enforcement officer is doing something that they can't be filmed for, then they more than likely don't need to be doing it.
Right.
But there are times where a law enforcement officer will come to your residence on a follow-up interview or for community service or community policing. And if they have their body cam on and they show the inside of your residence, for example, I don't think you want the world seeing what's in your home.
Right.
Now, if there's a crime that occurs inside your home, then that footage is fair game. But, I'm not going to release the officer's body cam footage of your interior of your home when he's just there for community service or a follow-up interview or something like that. So we need to be smart about what we do with the footage and how we store it.
Okay. Now tell me, has there been something that happened to you in your life to make you go into law enforcement?
Yeah, I was when I was 17. My father and I were profiled by a very small county sheriff deputy coming back from dropping my sister off when I was 17 years old. We were taking my sister to college. She went to West Georgia University. We lived in Macon, Georgia at the time. And we were driving back, my father and I, on the backcountry roads. And a sheriff deputy passed us in the other lane, and he whipped around on us, and he followed us. My dad stopped at a convenience store. He never turned his lights on. He followed us very closely. My dad stopped at a convenience store. He got out. He came to the car, and he in a very rude manner asked for my dad's license and insurance. And he just walked off. And my dad was like, hey, what's going on? He didn't say anything, and he went back to the car, and he ran our information. And I guess he found out that we weren't wanted by the FBI or anything. And by this time, people started coming out of the store. And he walked back up to the car, and he took my dad's stuff, and he threw it in the car. And my dad was like, hey, what's that all? What'd you stop us for? And he turned around, he looked at us in a very ugly tone. He said, your fog lights are too bright. That's what he stopped us for. And he got in his car and he drove off. And it forever changed my view of law enforcement and the world. I was 17. I was young. I was impressionable. And I didn't know what I was going to do with my life, But I was getting recruited to play football. I got scholarships. I was being recruited all over the country. I went back home for that ride. We had about an hour ride back home, and my father and I never spoke the rest of that ride, and it affected me. And I went inside and I started looking through brochures, college brochures, and I saw criminal justice on the paper, and it was like internal affairs, investigate law enforcement officers. 17 years old, I decided that day I was going into law enforcement to get rid of crooked cops.
Goodness, that is quite a story. So, is there anything else you would like Richland County people for us to know about you in running your plans as running as sheriff?
Well, more than anything, I just want to thank everybody for all the love and support that we've gotten since the beginning of this campaign. I had the best job in law enforcement, and I quit that job to run for sheriff because I believe in it that much. And it's been long, it's been hard days, early mornings, late nights, out neighborhood canvassing, events, programs, meetings, churches, and it's been a long, tough road. We've been getting the message out. People every day are more and more receptive. Once they get to sit down with us and hear what we're all about, we get support, and people have really shown us a lot of love, and I just want to thank everybody for that. That's important to me.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I want to thank you for sitting with I-5 The Heat today.
No
this
problem.
is so important to Richland County. I think it's time for a change myself, so thank you so much.
No, thank you, and thank you for what you do, and thank you for helping us get the word out and keep doing exactly what you're doing. I certainly appreciate you.
No problem. Thank you. I just want to get the word out to our lovely people of Richland County. Vote. We encourage everyone to come out and vote. Voting is very important. You cannot get anywhere in this life if you don't stand for something. We've had so many people that have lost their lives for us to have the right to vote. Please don't squander that right away. Go out and vote. June 14th is a very important date for Richland County. Thank you again, Mr. Flowers,
Thank you
for being here with I-5 The Heat.
Thank you.
Best wishes to you for June 14th elections.
Thank you. June 14th, please vote James Flowers for Sheriff, Richland County. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You are watching I-5 The Heat.